Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Between the Vines. It's a program brought to you by Penn State University and Cornell University. I'm Jennifer Phillips Russo, the Viticulture Extension Specialist for the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program. And again with me today is Dr. Terry Bates, who is the Director of the Cornell Lake Erie Research and Extension Laboratory here in Portland, New York. Thanks for being with us, Terry.
Yeah. Hi, Jen.
It's been
We
a
are right down, we're like 3 offices away. So we already talked to each other this morning, but now we can talk to everybody else.
We need to get some walkie-talkies just to go back and forth from that.
We definitely need an intercom.
So today we're actually going to switch it up a little bit. We've been doing a nutrition series with Dr. Bates, and he has another very important project that he has worked on for many years and is coming to fruition, and we're trying to push out to some growers to have them adopt it. And that is from the My Efficient Vineyard project. That was an SCRI project, and I will let Terry talk about what that is and who did the funding. But we are working with it. It's an incredible tool that'll help you see things spatially and digitally in your vineyards and to collect data and make management decisions. So I guess I'll throw it over to you, Terry.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen. So, yeah, I guess if you're local or not living under a rock, you've heard about the Efficient Vineyard Project. It's where we're trying to use spatial data coming from multiple sources, whether that most of what we do is proximal sensing in the vineyard. So sensors that are right in the vineyard on the tractors, but also from drones and satellites, taking spatial data in different forms, being able to map it, being able to validate it with some field measurements to turn that into viticulture information and then use that in our management. So I thought today's podcast, we could change it up from the nutrition a little bit. I know people like to hear about nutrition. And we're on to the soil pH issue, which I know is a hot topic for a lot of people. I thought today we could just switch it up and I made a video about this. I put it online and we're just going to talk about just some simple uses for some spatial data in estimating crop, in estimating vine size, and then calculating crop load and how we would use that in our harvest operations. Since harvest is right around the corner, I thought it would be an interesting topic to talk about.
Absolutely. I want to back up one iota because you had mentioned all the different sensors and everything that you can use, but I would like to just let everybody out there who are listening, if you aren't familiar with it, you don't need sensors to use this tool. You could be the sensor, and
you could be the sensor. You are a sensor, so you need sensors, but you can be the sensor.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, so anything you want to collect, So, to me, this is not, people are like, oh, it's sensor technology and it's stuff that's in the future and I'm not ready for it, or I don't like using computers or whatever. And to me, it's really not any different than the viticulture you've been doing forever, right? You make observations in the field, and based on those observations, you say, hey, I'm going to manage a vineyard in a particular way. And now we're just trying to capture what the variation is within a field so you can apply that management variable rate. So one of the things that we talk about is you being the sensor, in that you're just walking through the vineyard, making your own observations, and the MyEV software tool, the data collector that you can run on your cell phone, just would allow you to collect that data as you're walking through the vineyard and be able to spatially map it. So whether you're it's a satellite that's miles up in the sky and it takes one snapshot of your vineyard and you have all this georeference data, or if you're just collecting that georeference data by yourself in the vineyard, it does, like, I really don't care where the spatial data comes from. We want to be able to use different forms or different like vehicles to just bring that spatial data in together to be able to make our management decisions.
And then when you say bring them in together to make those management decisions, for the people out there listening to this, that's looking at it at your computer. You go out and you collect that data and you come home and sit in your office and make decisions from your office. So it's very powerful. I use it all the time in my own research as well.
Yeah, it's a very practical thing in that, like, we always use the example of a broken post or a gopher hole. So when you're out in the vineyard and you see a gopher hole or a broken post, you're like, okay, I need to fix that. But if you leave one day and you come back and you're like, oh, where was that broken? And this just allows you to be able to geotag that so that you can go back to where that was and just not waste any time trying to remember. And similarly, like let's not talk about broken posts now. Let's talk about potassium deficiency or too heavy of a crop load. And you're in a section of the vineyard where you're like, oh, these vines are really sick because, there's the vines are too small and the crop is way too big and they're really going to struggle. Like, where was that? Like when all the leaves fall off after harvest, it's really tough to tell in a dormant vineyard, like, where was that? How do I adjust my pruning based on what I saw during the season? This just allows you to capture it and be able to then go back out to the field and do that management when it's no longer obvious to you. Okay, so if you can see my screen, and I know some people listen on the podcast don't see the screen, I've pulled up the Efficient Vineyard website. So efficientvineyard.com is where you can build your farm with the MyEV tool. And we have information out there. So the MyEV documentation is kind of tutorial documentation on how to use the different aspects of the MyEV tool. And the viticulture blog is where I put some of these case use studies. Like I always get from the growers, what am I going to use this for? And as we go through the season and I'm like, yep, this is what I'm using it for. I just put those examples out there. To see how we would use it. So the one we're going to talk about is this: estimating Concord yield, pruning weight, and crop load with NDVI and field observations. And there is a video, a YouTube video, and I'm just going to start it and put it on pause. So I'm going to use it like slides for this conversation.
So before we go any further, just for those people who might be listening and aren't familiar with the work we've done with NDVI here, can you just give a brief overview of what is NDVI? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so the example we're giving today is you could do what I've done in this tutorial today with one NDVI sensor. So we use a crop circle NDVI sensor. There are other ones on the market. Our particular one measures red edge, and near infrared reflectance off of the vine. So there's, let me just make sure I pause this. So we drive through the vineyard. We have this NDVI sensor. We point it at the canopy. It has a light source on it. So it's shining essentially like white light onto the grapevines, and then the leaves will reflect light back to the sensor, and the sensor measures that. And so we look at the ratio to near infrared and red light to calculate NDVI. And for us, and I'll even show an example here, we're really just looking to see if there's a leaf there or not.
How much green is there, right?
Yeah, so there are some aspects of it where you can start to look at leaf health, chlorophyll content, that kind of thing. What I use it for is just, are there leaves there or not? So the higher the NDVI signature, the more full the canopy is, right? And that's, from a viticulture perspective, that's what we're looking at in the vineyard, right? If I can see that one canopy is very full and one is very sparse, I just want to be able to position the sensor to pick that up. And that's what we're doing here. So we're using one NDVI sensor, and you can mount it on a tractor. We mount it on a gator, and we drive it up and down the rows and collect that data. You can do the same thing from a drone. You can even do the same thing from a satellite. And I think there are pros and cons of using the different modes for different purposes. And we can also talk about that a little bit, without making this podcast way too long.
Right.
So experimentally, what we do is we run that NDVI sensor through the vineyard just about every other week. Some years we've done it even weekly. And just to see how that NDVI signature changes throughout the season. So there's a couple things. One is that so we're doing this in a Concord system, which is a high wire cordon, a 6 foot high cordon, and the growth vine habit is that the canopy droops. So our Sensor starts up by the cordon, the top of the canopy, and as the season goes and as that canopy grows, we move that sensor down, and we're even continuing to look at that positioning to give us better estimates of either yield or vine size. So, okay.
I want to just add in that before you go on to that, you've been doing this for over 10 years, correct? So you have over 10 years of data of NDVI that you were looking at.
Yeah, we've been doing like the weekly NDVI stuff for solidly for 4 or 5 years now.
So you're confident in your results is what I'm trying to get at with, like, you have definitely studied this. And
right, and I'll show some data here that it'll make that a lot more clear. Okay, so viticulturally speaking, so let's forget about sensors for a second. What do I want to measure? I want to have an estimate of yield and an estimate of vine size, because I use those two together to give me my crop load measurement, or what we call a Ravaz index, or a yield to pruning weight ratio. And we've recently published, so I took like 15 years worth of data on pruning and thinning from different experiments we had, and we came up with our crop load model for Concord. And just to say, okay, Ravaz index values of X, Y, and Z are undercropped vines, balanced vines, and overcropped vines. And if the vines are overcropped, you're going to struggle to accumulate sugar in the fruit, and you're going to decrease pruning weight. So you're going to hurt your crop potential for the next year. If the vines are undercropped, they tend to become excessively vigorous. So you just get these big monster canopies, and you have a bunch of shaded fruit. And if the vine is balanced, so that is kind of like our, our gold standard is you want to have balanced vines because you want to have the appropriate amount of leaf area for the appropriate amount of crop that is there, so that you both get maximum fruit maturity and you maintain that vegetative growth, consistent vegetative growth, so that next year you can come back with a similar crop potential. So we do that, by measuring the yield to pruning weight ratio, which is crop load, and it has those metrics at the end. So the point here is, if we could estimate yield in season and we could estimate vine size in season, I could at veraison time have an estimated crop load, and then that would tell me in my vineyard, hey, this is where the fruit's going to ripen quickly, and this is where the fruit is going to be delayed, and that would factor into my harvest decisions. And then I also have an understanding of like, oh, where are my vines very overcropped, where I'm going to lose pruning weight and I'm going to lose crop potential for next year. So that may change my management going into next season, that I know, okay, I have a section of my vineyard, the vines are very stressed. I better start doing some, mitigating practices to boost that vine size back up. And you've gone into the dark.
I know, I told you.
We live in a smart building. If you don't move it, the lights shut off. Okay, so that's what we're doing in this activity today, is that we're using one NDVI sensor and some field measurements to give me my estimated yield and vine size so we can calculate crop load.
I think that this technology, the way we talk about it, because we sort of live it every day and we're deep into the research of it, when you step back and think of never hearing of this before and being able to get out of your vineyard, sit at your desk and see, just like you were talking about, how much of our block is overcropped. Like you could actually see your block on the screen and be able to visualize spatially what that is, as opposed to standing out in the vineyard and really trying to guess at it, if that makes sense.
Yes. So we have another video somewhere buried in those viticulture blogs on doing revenue mapping of your vineyard. So at the end of the season, if you have a yield monitor and you know what the price was paid for that fruit, you can do some revenue mapping. And like and you match that up with what your production costs were. So you can see in your vineyard where you're gaining money and where you're losing money. And it's really telling when you hit a part of your vineyard and you're like, I'm actually losing money in that part of the vineyard. It starts to hit home really quick. Like, I need to do something about that. Identify why I'm losing money and remediate that. All right, back to NDVI. So here's our NDVI setup. So we have these crop circle sensors. We have one, as I said, at the early in the season, so around bloom. It's positioned where it's up near the cordon.
Yes.
And then as that canopy grows, we move that sensor down and try to keep it within the growing region of the canopy. And
That's to capture the new growth and see if there's changes.
yep. So what happens if we do have one sensor, this one here in the back, if for those of you who can see it on video, we leave one sensor up high around the cordon, and all we ever see with that is that it saturates. So it, early in the season, you're seeing the difference between strongly growing vines and weak vines. And then once that starts to grow out, the sensor just saturates. All it does is see green leaves. So
Right.
you're like, you can't tell the difference between good vines and bad vines. That's why we dropped the sensor. You could, if you had money, I mean, you could put a whole bank of sensors up and down that canopy and do an average, and you'd be able to get a similar measurement. But we're just trying to do it with one sensor. So we, again, just position that sensor where you keep it in the growing region of the canopy, and that's where it will tell you the differences in vine vegetative growth.
This may be putting you on the spot, but just a ballpark figure. Do you know approximately how much one of the sensors costs? Just one sensor.
Yeah, I think so. The crop circle sensor with the data logger that has a GPS in it, I think they're around 5,000, and the price keeps changing. Actually, the price was lower, and then when people started, when the demand went up, the price went up a little bit. So I think they're somewhere around the $4,000 to $5,000 range.
But from what you can get, the information you can get and how you can use this, and then you were talking about revenue maps, I think that it's a good investment.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's I mean, yeah. You think of the other stuff, the other pieces of equipment that we spend money on, like a $400,000 grape harvester, adding a couple sensors to it is economies of scale, I guess. Okay. We're going to, of course, our podcasts they always get really long.
Always great
Okay.
information, though.
So this is Concord vineyards and a sprawling, drooping growth habit, and we run these sensors weekly throughout the season. Now, here's data from 3 seasons showing that the correlation between NDVI and our yield maps at harvest is highest when we have NDVI at bloom. And then for pruning weight, the best correlation is later in the season when that canopy is like filled out around veraison. So that's where I always say, okay, if I had one sensor and I only had to scan my vineyard like twice during the season, I'd do it at bloom or just immediate pre-bloom, and then I'd do one around veraison. And those two things give me a lot of information, or I can use them, leverage them for my crop estimation and my pruning weight estimation.
And you were going through your vineyards anyways at that time, usually with a spray program.
Correct. Yeah, you can dual purpose this very easily. Okay, what I have pulled up here now is like what's an overcropped, what's a balance, and what's an undercropped vine, and what are the values we're looking for. And we've published this. You can certainly go and read it and study it.
If you would like that paper, let us know. We can put it
we can put a link to it in the description. Like what do they always say? Like and share, and we'll post a link in the.
Can you do the thumbs up again for me, please?
Okay, so our process is we scan the vineyard for NDVI. We clean and interpolate the sensor data in MyEV. So this data logger. We just pull that data right into MyEV, and you're going to get everything, right? You're going to get headlands, you're going to get roads, you're going to get errors in the data. And so we have some tools, and you can watch a ton of videos on how we clean up data.
Very easy. Don't get scared.
Yep. You snap it to a block, and you just use these little slider filters to get rid of crappy data, and so that you have just good data within the vineyard that you can work with. We use that. So now we look at the pattern that's in that spatial data, and we go out and we sample. You don't have to, but I highly recommend it that you do that. You do that. So most of these sensors, I say, are relative, right? You can see where the high signature is in the vineyard and where the low signature is in it, but you really don't know. Like, am I For example, if I'm using NDVI and trying to translate it with yield, and I see this vineyard and it's got a high, medium, and low, well, is it 8 tons per acre versus 8.5 tons per acre? Or is it 2 tons per acre versus 10 tons per acre? Like, I don't know that until I actually go out and take some measurements. That's what the validation protocol stuff is all about. And you can do this right in MyEV. You have spatial data, you process it, and then you can either manually select, hey, this is a high spot, I'm going to go look here. This is a low spot, I'm going to go look here. Or you can have the computer generate points that you can navigate to in the vineyard and collect your validation data. I'm actually lately, I've been leaning towards picking my own points.
Me too.
Yeah, just because, again, you're using the knowledge of the vineyard manager, right? The vineyard manager may know, yep, hey, that's a good spatial map. Yeah, I know there's a wet spot here, so the vines are going to have, low pruning weight. Maybe I got to go look to see what the crop is on those vines. And like, I know I need to go to that area. So I'm not going to let the computer pick that point for me. I'll just pick it myself. Then you go and you collect your your field observations. And if there's a nice relationship between the spatial data and the low density data points that you've collected in the field, if there's a nice relationship there, for example, between bloom NDVI and your crop estimation samples, if there's a nice relationship, you translate it. Now you can translate your NDVI map into an estimated crop map, which is what we've done in this. And then you use that for your viticulture management. And
These are all big, scary terms to people who are not technologically savvy, but I don't want you to let that deter you, because there are tutorials online at the VIP blog that Dr. Bates gave you the email or the URL before, and it's very simple. Please don't be nervous. Just try it. Get out there and try. We can help you if you have to set that up.
Okay, so very simply, this map, for those of you who can see it, is a bloom NDVI map of the Concord vineyards at the Cornell Lake Erie Research and Extension Lab. And we've gone through the cleaning and processing so that we could look at good data. And then I selected these points, because I said, oh, okay, there are areas of low NDVI and areas of high NDVI and some stuff in between. So in the MyEV software, I just was able to go out and say, okay, this is a really bad area. I want to see what's going on there. I do a crop estimate. So these points that we have on here are where we do our 30-day after bloom crop estimations, where we take our harvester, we lay out a rope that's 1% of an acre. We clean pick that rope and then weigh that fruit, double the weight, depending on the berry curve, to get what our final harvest weight is going to be. And that's what we did here. So, and then we related right in the MyEV software, we could relate the NDVI reading at each one of those points with our crop estimation at each one of those points. And we got a nice linear relationship with an R of, that's a correlation coefficient of about 0.58, which isn't awesome, but to me, that's good enough, where it's saying where I had low NDVI, I have low yield estimate. Where I have high NDVI, I have high yield estimate. And then I can run a translation and just turn that into, instead of an NDVI map, it's a crop estimation map with actual numbers on it. Okay, so when I do run the translation, now I can look at the statistics of all that's on my farm there. And it's showing that I have a mean yield of 8 tons per acre.
So across, and how many acres did you do this?
That is 18.8 acres. So, and I can see the distribution as well. And then you can even click on you click on any of these colors. So there's a legend here with the different colors that are on the map, and you can click on one of the colors and it'll tell you how many acres, if I'm in, how many acres do I have? 6.8 to 7.8 tons per acre. Oh, it tells me over here, 2.89 acres have that. So you can just look at some of the different statistics of like, what is my yield estimate on X number of acres? And again, just use that. Now we will compare this with our yield monitor data. So at harvest, we're fortunate enough to have a yield monitor on our mechanical grape harvester, and we'll collect that data as we're harvesting, and we use the truck weights at the scale house to validate that data, or to like calibrate the yield monitor on the harvester.
I'm also looking at this heat map thinking that just knowing what your colors represent, you could easily go out and test bricks there throughout the after break.
Yeah, don't jump ahead of me.
I'm sorry.
Because, okay, viticulturally, your question is, do you want to test bricks on the yield differences, or do you want to test bricks on the crop load differences, which is what brings in the estimating pruning weight part. So let's get to that part. Okay, so here's a later season NDVI from July 19th, which is kind of on the brink of where we want. Like, I wanted to do this a little later, but I was going to make the video, so I had to go out and do it. So again, I'm seeing a pattern in NDVI later in the season. It's similar, but not the same as what we were getting during the bloom time period. And so I can't go out and collect pruning weight right now because the vines aren't dormant, but I can go out and visually estimate what the pruning weight is. So same thing. I selected points in the vineyard from the high, medium, and low spots, and I went out and I did a visual estimate of what I think the pruning weight is going to be in those parts of the vineyards. And let me, of course.
You did
Here
this
we go.
all on your data collector on your cell phone, just walking to those spots there.
Right. So can you, if you can see that. So we've even been playing around with where to position the sensor. So again, sensor starts high. As we go through the season, we move that sensor lower. But I was like still saying this relationship between NDVI and pruning weight was okay, but can we do better? And I know we could do better. I mean, because when I go to the field and I go to those red areas from the NDVI map, I'm like, wow, those vines are barely filling the canopy. They're really sick, low. Right. They're going to have low vine size. Versus ones that are really, really big. There's a full canopy of leaves, almost overfilling with multiple layers of leaves. So just, again, this is trying to use your grower experience of, this is going to be a 1/2 pound vine. This is going to be 1.5 pound vine. This is going to be a 2.5 pound vine. This is going to be a 3 pound vine. I mean, why do we take pruning weight at all? It's because it's reflective of what last year's canopy growth was like, and it's a predictor of next year's crop potential. So, where'd it go? There we go. So all I did was go out and make visual observations, and I tagged those different areas with what I predicted the pruning weight was going to be. And we are using different sensor setups, and these are actually giving us much better estimates of pruning weight, which we can, at the very least, we can compare to last year's pruning weight. And that pattern is so much more like accurate than where we have been leaving the sensor, which has been about mid canopy. And you can see that in the distributions of the data. So this first graph is where we left the sensor about mid canopy. This second graph is where it's much lower. It's about 17 inches off the ground, and that shoots out a beam at a 40-degree angle. So I'm catching like that bottom third of the canopy. And then I even rotated the sensor so that it may go out 40 degrees in the horizontal direction, but only goes out 10 degrees in the vertical direction. So say that's like scanning your produce at the grocery store. You're scanning your vineyard in this one little slice where you think the canopy differences are going to exist. So I think this works for Concord in this type of growth habit. And I think the more powerful lesson is these sensors are really useful in that I, as a vineyard manager, if I move into a VSP system, I'm going to put those sensors somewhere else where Like where I visually see a difference between vine growth, I'm going to put that sensor where it captures what I'm seeing so that I can easily map that spatially.
And what we failed to mention earlier is that when you take those points and you do those points on your grid generator on each desktop, they're geolocated where you or anyone on your team can walk out and get that information for you. Walk to that spot, not the exact spot, but in that general location.
Right. Some growers say I'm too busy to do this stuff, or like I'm not computer savvy. I'm like, well, I bet you have an intern
Right.
or
Or a
or
son,
a child who
yeah.
is got their nose stuck in their cell phone all the time who would love to do this stuff. It's about gaining more information about your vineyard and using some, I'm not even going to say high tech technology anymore. This is kind of mainstream stuff now. Be
Right.
able to use, some of these off the shelf sensors and cell phone data. Use the GPS in your cell phone to get what you need. Okay, so I get a estimated yield map from the Bloom NDVI and 30-day after bloom crop estimates. I use a Verizon NDVI and then just some visual observations in the field. I mean, you can make those observations when you're putting on your last spray, say, and be able to track it while you're in the tractor. And then I put those two together. So to me, this is I don't know, the powerful thing about MyEV and the powerful thing about viticulture. That's why I think sometimes we talk so much about the technology that you're missing the viticulture. And to
Exactly.
me, the viticulture is if I have a yield estimate and a pruning weight estimate, I have a crop load estimate, and that's a powerful tool that I can use in my management. And can I visualize that? And the answer is yes, because in MyEV, I interpolate my crop estimate and then I interpolate my pruning weight estimate onto the same grid. So I can do math on those. I can do my yield to pruning weight ratio and come up with a Rivaz index and map my Rivaz index. So I know that in this particular case now, where the vineyard is green and yellow, or it's like green is undercropped, yellow is like balanced, and orange and red are overcropped. So I know where those, now I know where the vines are struggling and I know where they're not going to struggle. Um, from a practical standpoint, if I know like, okay, harvest season is coming, where this is easy because I'm dealing with what, like 5 blocks here.
Right,
But
right.
say I had 50 blocks and I'm trying to decide where am I going to start picking when the harvest season starts. Well, I'm going to go to this area where the vineyard is mostly green because I know that's going to be dead ripe when the harvest season rolls around. So I'm going to pick that first, and then it'll be maybe the next week or the week after that I'm picking my next loads. I'm going to go to the ones that are more whatever middle of the road, and then the overcrop stuff I'm going to pick last because I just want to let that hang in the vineyard as long as possible
Right, right.
to get it in. So, and I know I always bring this up and I laugh about it. Our growers are very good at doing a technique called field blending. So, where they'll mix some heavier crop load fruit that may struggle with bricks, and they'll mix that with some undercropped stuff and try to bring up the quality of the entire load. So if I were to do something like that, I would really use this map to help me, to guide me in my field blending operations. But I think viticulturally, I would say pick the undercrop stuff first and let the overcrop stuff hang.
Well, yeah. But then I'm also thinking as you're looking at these maps, and we should probably just do an entire series on MyEV and what you can do with it, talking to how it can be helpful in your operations. Just going out, if you're the winemaker, you have a map that's showing you where your
Oh,
heavier.
absolutely. Yeah, I've said that before. So a lot of times winemakers make the decision on when something is going to be picked. So I, as a vineyard manager, would love to hand my winemaker, here's my crop load map. Go to these different sections of the vineyard and taste the fruit and tell me if you can taste the difference between the undercropped, the balanced, and the overcropped vines. And we could come to an agreement on when you're going to pick that fruit.
Right. Very powerful. And
Yeah.
I'm so proud to be a part of this project.
Yeah. So we are this season. So we're using it. We're doing exactly that. We're using our estimated crop load map. Now we've stratified fruit sampling, and we are tracking fruit development from veraison to harvest. And so we're about whatever week and a half, 2 weeks past veraison. And what we typically see is that balanced overcropped and undercropped vines, they all hit veraison about 7.5 bricks. And for that first week or week and a half after veraison, they all look the same. And you're like, huh, crop load makes no difference, Bates. You should just shut up. But it's at this time when our days are getting shorter, about 2 weeks after veraison, that we start to see that separation. And we are starting to see that now. Our overcrop vines are really starting to slow down in terms of sugar accumulation, where the balanced and undercrop ones are keeping up with where they should be.
Fantastic. So if you are interested in learning more about this, please remember that all those tutorials are out there on the VIT blog at efficientvineyard.com.
Yeah.
We also have a program where we're trying to have grower adoption. So if you are in our area, set up an appointment to come in and speak to myself, and we can get you started on MyEV if you're nervous about the tutorials. And then please leave a comment below if you have any questions or concerns. All right, thanks for joining us again. I can see many more of these podcasts coming up because I can't say how excited I am about how helpful this could be to our growers, whether you have sensors or you don't have sensors, because you are the sensor and you can visualize it yourself. All the data that you can collect is endless. So I'm really excited about this. And I thank you for all the work that you've done for our growers on this project.
No, thank you.
All right, so that's it for this week. Everybody, good luck with harvest. Use that MyEV collector to go out and collect your brick samples. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.